Hello, I'm Christopher von Reuden, Assistant Professor at the Jepson School of Leadership Studies here at the University of Richmond. I'm an anthropologist, and it's my pleasure to welcome Polly Wiessner, who is a cultural anthropologist, professor at University of Utah, recently inducted into the National Academy of Sciences. So I'm really happy she's here. She's been an inspiration for me. I'm excited for your talk tonight, and we get to have a little chat right now.
Okay, and I have worked for, this will age me, 40 years with the Kung Bushmen and 30 years in Papua New Guinea. So on largely on matters like social networks, risk, security, warfare.
Yes.
Yes.
And it's good you pronounced the Kung, because my click would have been...
You could. I could teach you. Okay. Yeah.
So I think a question I would ask you is what is cultural anthropology? Because I think a lot of people have heard the word anthropology, but what does it mean, at least to you?
Oh boy, that's a hard one. Well, so you see, I work in evolutionary anthropology and I work in cultural anthropology, and I don't see a real difference. Cultural anthropology to me more is the study of cultural institutions that kind of regulate people's behavior. And what a cultural institution is, it's just a set of rules, norms, practices, values, likes, that makes behavior, well, gives regularity in behavior and makes it predictable, brings people together. So when I call myself a cultural anthropologist, it is really just more for studying the cultural or the social institutions rather than alone what people eat or other such things.
Okay. As you said, a lot of your work has been with the Kong and the Enga of Highland New Guinea. Both are very different, but similarly traditional societies, small-scale human societies. Why study small-scale human societies? Why has that been a focus rather than of yours and others like myself?
Well, I think, if throughout human evolution, I'm interested in evolutionary anthropology, and we did evolve in small-scale societies. And so to understand the basic behavior of small-scale societies is really necessary to understand the evolution of things like cooperation, conflict, mediation, that allowed for larger societies to emerge. Okay. So I think, and also we study the small-scale societies that are left because we don't know how long they're going to be here.
That's true.
That's another question, because they're quickly getting swamped and overrun by the larger societies, by globalization, by capitalistic ethics. So I think we are looking for some fundamental principles of society.
So within 50 years, it might be really impossible to study a small-scale society.
Well, I think there are always small-scale societies emerging and forming within larger scale ones. But it will be interesting in 50 years to ask the question, to compare the ones we're studying now and see if these smaller scale societies that emerge within large ones, and we see this in our own culture, to see if they are founded on the same principles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say that you're a rare anthropologist in terms of your impact outside the discipline, in evolutionary biology, economics, and so why do you think that is? What have you learned about being human, or about being human among the Enga or the Kung? And you've mentioned things about understanding cooperation, understanding conflict. Maybe you could delve more into that. Some specifics from those groups.
I think one reason is that today many people are modeling, and I have always felt it necessary to collect quantitative data in whatever I do, because you can be very swayed by impression of one examples. I've always wanted to collect a data set, quantitative data. And the modelers in the other fields, economics, evolutionary studies, are really eager to have quantitative data. Yeah. So I think that's why my work has, spread into some other areas. Because if you're building models, you really need to know whether your assumptions are right or not. And so then if you collect quantitative data, this does help.
So was this a methodological focus of yours early on? You were at the Max Planck Institute. before you were at Utah. How long have you been dialoguing sort of beyond anthropology?
Well, I started off as an archaeologist
Okay.
at Michigan, and then I became an ethnoarchaeologist. And in those days at Michigan, we used to say that an archaeologist is an anthropologist who could count.
Okay.
And so then I already was bridging in ethnoarchaeology, archaeology, and anthropology. And then, of course, evolutionary studies with evolutionary ecology, behavioral ecology, moved heavily into archaeology. Archaeologists use the principles a lot. So that would be another step.
Okay.
Yeah, into bridging the different subfields of anthropology.
Mm-hmm. So working with traditional societies, or really in any society, I think comes with as an anthropologist, comes with a sort of moral responsibility to that your work sort of maybe matter to the people you're working with, or that you engage with them and helping them with their goals. I work with the Chamane in Bolivia, as you know, and part of this neat project, and it's lucky we've been getting the funding to provide medical treatment and to the people we're working with. And you've been really engaged with the people you've worked with as well.
Yeah.
So maybe you could speak to that somewhat.
Yes, well, for me, it's not moral, it's personal.
Okay.
So I work with these people, and I've worked with them, with Bushmen for 30 years and Enga for 40. And you see the problems they're facing, and you're getting things from them, and you like these people, and you have people in these societies that you love, and you just want to help them. Yeah. So one can say it's moral and it's an obligation, but actually for me it's personally driven. And that's why I started a nonprofit specifically aimed at certain issues in Enga and the Bushmen. And it's nice because I know the societies well, so when projects go wrong, which they often do, you can turn them around because you're there every year working with them. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, but I'd like to think it was moral, but it's personal.
I mean, I agree with you. I've had, when I work with the Chamane guys who I've spent a lot of time working with, and I feel a connection with them, and it's just that shared history of spending time together.
And when they're hungry, can you not respond?
Oh, yeah.
When your friends are hungry?
Sure.
Yeah.
So my greatest joys have been through sharing my love of soccer with the people I work with. They love soccer, I love soccer, and it's one of my most favorite anthropological tools, because it sort of breaks boundaries instantly when you're sharing the soccer field, and then it's also a means by which I can impart some help to people by providing the soccer team with, cleats and uniforms and stuff like that. And you've had a similar kind of experience.
Well, I mean, soccer seems to be the universal language for making contact with other cultures. I actually don't know why. But in the Bushmen, they don't keep score. They just play. But, so it's not a competitive game. Yeah, they just play, and then they get a goal, and they never keep score. There aren't winners and losers.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that certainly is something that breaks the ice.
There was some anecdote, though, in a write-up.
Oh, there's an anecdote, yeah. So Yo-Yo Ma, the famous cellist, went out to the Kalahari and played with the Bushmen, and then he said he would give them equipment for their soccer team.
Right.
So one night I was in Salt Lake City sleeping, and the phone rings, and I hear these clicks and clacks, Bushmen, and the first question is, does a phone work in Bushman or only in English? And I said, no, it works in English. They had gotten a phone at a safari camp. The operator was away, and they were using it. And they said, well, we just called Yo-Yo Ma in Boston, which must have been 3 a.m, and asked him if he would send money for the soccer equipment. And we were wondering if we drew pictures of our feet, if you would buy it and bring it over the next trip. So that's a real international connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one thing we were talking about over lunch is about sort of culture change or culture loss, and you work with the Enga and the institution that you've set up there. Is it partly an effort to sort of integrate their education with sort of the traditional cultural beliefs and practices?
Well, You can't preserve culture. We haven't preserved our culture. You can't go for cultural preservation. But what you can preserve is the knowledge of culture. Mm-hmm. And if you present this in an educational system in an appealing way, mm-hmm. people will know the fundamental principles of their culture, the values, the norms, and then they can make a decision about what they would like to carry forward into the future and what they would like to leave behind. Without this knowledge, they can't make this decision. There are some things that just don't work today, like a lot of the treatment of women. Right. And so, that has to be left behind. But there are other things, really fundamental principles of community that should be carried forward. So by preserving knowledge of the culture and integrating it in an appealing way into every subject in the school system, people can then decide, what shall we carry with us, what shall we leave behind?
Yeah, so this is not some sort of, the Europeans are coming in saying, you need to preserve your sort of, noble savage kind of life, right? This is empowering them to decide,
Yeah, what they, to see, for the kids in an education system to see, wow, that is really powerful. That is a really positive thing. This is something we want to continue. A lot of culture will go because culture is generated in part by the economic base, and you can't keep it when the economic base disappears, but you can keep some principles. Yeah.
All right, well, thank you.